change your life with the law of attraction. What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Hello, and once again, welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host once again. I said once again way too many times, Brett Dupree. Today I have a wonderful interview with Jacquelynne Peterson, who goes into depth about how she utilizes the law of attractions to help herself and her clients in creating wonderful businesses. But first, it's part of the podcast where I become vulnerable and talk about my life, because how can I expect people to be vulnerable if I am not vulnerable myself? Well, this is my first podcast in almost a month. Yes, a month. And that is because I moved to a new apartment. This is the first time. Actually, I moved to a whole new place, a whole new area. It was really not that far from where I lived before, about 12, 15 minutes away. But it's still a change. It's out of my neighborhood. I moved from a place called Eastgate, and now I think I'm in Lake Washington. I think that's where this area is known. It's actually a very nice area. My rent is technically going down to about $360 a month, which is nice, very nice, cheaper, which is always a good thing. But the other good thing is, moving. Moving is very stressful, and one of the ideas that I like is how you do anything is how you do everything. So I was thinking to myself on how I was doing this move. I gave myself a solid month to pack all my things, and I started about a month in, but I would have days where I wouldn't do much, and then I had days where I do a lot, and then I would have days where I do nothing, especially the final week. When I tend to overwhelm myself, I tend to shut down, and I've noticed that during my move. My plan was not to go on hiatus on my podcast, but that's just what happened. That's what happened because I allowed myself to be overwhelmed, and when I am overwhelmed, I shut down. And I make not that good decisions, such as spending too much and eating too much. And in eating too much, it wasn't that bad because I did lose 4 pounds during those 2 weeks, where 1 week I just ate all the food in the world. But at the same time, I could have been down a lot more if I decided to, not eat all the food in the world. But it's always nice to be down. So that got me thinking once again about stress and how I handle stress. And how in 2020, I decided that I want to not allow stress and overwhelm. And I feel like I've been trying to do that for a while now. This is one of those things that have been, I would say, the bane of my existence. One of the main things holding me back is I kind of happened to me. This is Sunday when I'm recording this, and I want to record this Saturday, but I thought to myself, I want to catch up on my podcast. So if I have nothing over the weekend, I should be able to get 2 podcasts out, and then I could work on my website and then work on my active campaign, which I've just been paying for, not using, and work on getting that down. And so Saturday, of course, I did nothing other than check out my grocery stores, which I have really downgraded in grocery stores. My other place had awesome grocery store access. My new place does not. The closest grocery store is not that impressive. And the other grocery store is in Renton, and someone yelled in the parking lot, if you don't step off, I am going to shoot you. And I have to say, I have never heard anybody try to shoot anybody or even make that threat in Bellevue. So that's a difference. But for the most part, everyone's really nice, though, in this area, just like anywhere else. I've been walking with a cane, and a lot of people have been really offering to help me. And that also didn't really happen in Bellevue as much with my cane. But also, let's go with some positive things, yes, and some celebrations. My right knee is finally getting to a point where tomorrow I'm going to start working out, start doing DDP yoga, and start meditating, which I said I was going to do, which I haven't. And yeah, so starting. Sometimes life doesn't go the way you planned, and working on the mindset is an important aspect of that. And so working on your mindset, which is why you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you do, but that is something that I'm going to be working on definitely as I strive to move forward. As once I have a few things to do to get my apartment set up the way I want it to, and then after doing that, my next thing is getting my new and improved, easy to maintain and update website. Just going to use a WordPress template, a free template, and not work too hard. Yeah, a one-shop shop. Soon it'll be just be BrettDupree.com. BRE, 2 T's, DUPR, 2 E's. But first, we have my interview with Jacquelynne Peterson, a person who was actually recommended to me by William Hung, which is super cool. Anyways, let me introduce you to her. A 20-year corporate veteran turned joy and purpose advocate, Jacquelynne Peterson knows just how exhausting and painful it is to live someone else's dream and slave away at work that doesn't excite you, while not knowing where your life is really headed. As a child of Vietnamese immigrant parents, getting good grades, going to college, and getting a good job was her prescription for success. She climbed the corporate ladder for 20 years, from entry-level to six-figure leadership positions. But even at the height of her career, she still wasn't fulfilled or excited about the direction of her life. Her life took a miraculous turn when she defied all logic to find clarity in her life vision while at rock bottom. She went from drifting aimlessly through her life career, incurring $150,000 in debt and a struggling marriage, to achieve financial freedom, a strong marriage, while doing what she loves. Now she's helping others find clarity on their life vision so they can start living the life that they were meant to, on purpose, with joy and direction. Her passion and purpose is to help uplift and inspire others to be their best selves and live their best lives. And now, here's my interview with Jacquelynne Peterson. Hello, Jacquelynne, and welcome to my podcast.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much for having me here, Brett.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How are you doing this wonderful Friday?
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm in Tampa, Florida, so very blessed to have such a beautiful sunny day.
I'm in Seattle, so it's raining.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
So it says here that your joyful living mindset. Can you tell people what that is?
What I do is I help people in terms of the basis of my work is all about mindset. But what the purpose is to help people find clarity. What it is that they really want in life, like what their ideal life looks and feels like for them, like specifically for them, like an authentic life for them that they want to live. Because I want to help people find more purpose and joy in living rather than just living by default and not knowing where their life is headed and slaving away at work that they don't enjoy and really not knowing where their life is headed and feeling hopeless and in despair.
Well, one thing I've learned is people who do awesome things like you do start out, not living that way. So it says here you're a 20-year corporate veteran. How was that?
Oh, wow. That was quite a journey. I think like a lot of people growing up, especially for my sake, my family, we were immigrant family. Growing up, getting good grades, going to school, going to college, and graduating and trying to land a job with a good company and climbing the corporate ladder. That was our prescription for success. And so that's what I did. And I wanted to please my parents and make them proud. And I didn't know any better that was probably how life works. And I did that, went from positions to positions and climbed the corporate ladder. But I was realizing that even as I was advancing through my career, my sense of joy and fulfillment didn't match that next level, advancement in my career. And so early on, I started searching. There's got to be more to this than that. What is it that I'm missing? And that was what started my quest for a lot of things. And throughout, obviously, 20 years, a lot has happened and a lot of growth potential and a lot of things to learn from your life from that as well.
So you started to search out, what was the first thing you thought out to find fulfillment?
Honestly, I have to really credit and thank my husband because he is the one that is from early on in our marriage. He's always searching, either reading self-help books or listening to other teachers. And he actually got me into that. My first introduction was I actually caught The Secret video. I think you had mentioned in your previous podcast that you were aware of that as well, right? That you listened to that CD or that movie. And on there were a lot of great inspirational teachers. And my first one that really kind of stood out to me was the Teachings of Abraham. It just, for whatever reason, it just really spoke to me and resonated with me. And all the other people that were on there as well, their messaging. And it made me realize that we don't have to live by default. Like that we can be the masters of our own destiny. It triggered something in me. So I just started searching and started looking more into all of these great teachings and followed Abraham Hicks, and all these other great inspirational teachers to give me a different, higher awareness about myself, about life, about what is possible beyond what is my current situation. And that was just been a 16 plus personal journey for me.
So I'm curious, what does living by default look like in your life?
It was basically what I was referring to earlier was following my parents or other people's standards and expectations of us, right? Getting a job, climbing the corporate ladder, striving to reach a certain social status or financial status, and just kind of keeping up, looking around and seeing how other people are doing. So I guess I have to follow that standard instead of following your own standard. And you're reacting to things that are happening to you rather than being intentional of what you want to have happen in your life.
And how was that feeling at the time? I mean, how was your day-to-day just looking?
Oh, yeah, back then it was very tough for me because I was constantly battling with why am I not doing better in life than I was. Like back then we were struggling financially greatly. I mean, we were struggling to make ends meet. We just had a family, a young baby. It was starting off out of college and it was just entry level jobs. And so it was really tough from a financial perspective. So that financial stress also put a strain on our marriage as well. Life living like that day by day and over the years, it just kind of made things worse and worse and worse. And it got to a point where my life actually started hitting rock bottom in 2012, where I was laid off from my job, and which I thought that was my whole life and my career and my identity, kind of just having the rug pulled from underneath you. And on top of that, we were over $150,000 in debt and our marriage was on the rocks as well. At that point, I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And that was when I realized that I've been following all these teachings throughout beforehand all these years, and I've been trying to implement and practice it, but it wasn't anything like kind of major that changed, but it was hitting rock bottom and realizing however it was that I was living and whatever mindset that I had, that wasn't serving me. So I had to do something. It was really more in desperation because I had to do something and pretty quickly at that point.
Wow, $150,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Was shopping a way you compensated for that feeling of emptiness?
That's a great point you brought up, Brett. And yes, and I think that myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who struggle with this, is that when you have this inner void in you and you're trying to fill it, and instead of looking from within for the answers, you try to fill it externally, whether that be, like you said, shopping, going out and acquiring another item, a pair of shoes or a purse or clothing, thinking that you'll fill that void but it ends up just cluttering more of your home and depleting your resources even more. Or it could be investing in things that you've heard people had success in. It's like, oh, if they've had success in that, so we should do that as well, but not really understanding whether or not that investment or that tactic is aligned with where we want to go or what you personally want to have happen in your life. So you're blindly investing because of somebody else, and then that ends up depleting your resources even more. And that was pretty much what happened with us, is that we didn't have clarity on what it is that we really wanted in life, and myself specifically as well. So we weren't strategic about our money, our time, or our resources.
So when you first saw The Secret and you were like, ooh, I think I'm going to live more deliberately, what were some of the first actions you took?
Probably the first thing that I started being aware of is paying more attention to how I feel. Because before, like I said, I was living by default. Let's say, for instance, my husband and I would get into an argument. By default, it's like, okay, so I feel crappy. It's because of something that he did or said or whatnot, and using that an excuse to stay upset or angry or whatnot. But it was after viewing The Secret and started following the teachings of all these inspirational leaders, I started to understand that we really are responsible for our own happiness. And at first I fought that. I did not want to embrace that in the beginning because again, with the same example, I was like, well, so you're saying that when my husband and I get into an argument and he did something or said something to hurt my feelings, that's my fault. I don't buy that, right? But I think more and more as I studied more and more of these teachings, I realized that the reason why we're responsible for our own happiness is that it's not that it's my fault that he said something to upset me. It's more of it's my fault that I chose to focus on something that didn't serve me. So I chose to focus on an aspect of him that was not the best representation of him. I chose to extract the more negative side of him into my life. But if I instead focus on feeling gratitude and appreciating who he was, the qualities that he had and whatnot, then I would attract that more loving side and more joyous side of him. And that was the biggest thing for me to learn. It is how to refocus my thoughts so that it would serve me, so that I could attract better feeling things into my life.
So once you start refocusing your thoughts to attract better things, what better things did you start attracting?
The biggest part is feeling more empowered. I have to say, in the beginning, it was like all hell breaking loose, because now that I'm more aware of my feelings and my thoughts, it was really overwhelming and confusing all at the same time. But I think eventually I became, the biggest thing that created positive attraction is that I became more empowered of my own life. It allowed me to step up and take more control of my life, whether that be my career or my relationship or being a mother, what kind of parenting that I want to have with my son, and all around in my relationships, my career, my money, how much money and that I want to, wealth and finance that I want to attract into my life. And it wasn't until, like I said, when I hit rock bottom and I really had more commitment and was more deliberate and intentional to turn my life around, that I seeked for clarity, finding clarity on what it is that I want in my life and what that looks and feels like to me, that I then just meditated and do all these practices, this daily discipline for achieving that inner peace and alignment, that doors and opportunities started opening up to me that was just like miraculous. I didn't even seek for these opportunities, and they just came kind of knocking on my door. And all I did literally was just answer that door to see where it would lead me. And from then on, that was probably the easiest and most joyous way to get job opportunities or promotions or advancements and become more financially abundant than I've ever been previously before that point.
So how did it help in your personal life?
It helps on the relationship side, right? So now I'm becoming more aware of whatever I focus on, I'm attracting. Now, when I feel either stressed out or I feel that, the frustration towards either my husband or son or parents or anyone, friends or whatever, I realize that there's something that I'm focusing on that is not serving me and it's not making me feel good. And I realize that feeling good and having that kind of higher vibration is kind of the key to opening up things and inviting things into my life that would maintain that joyous, happy feeling that I'm seeking for. If I'm thinking about someone and in a negative light and it's reflecting back and making me feel anxious or nervous or upset or whatnot, then I just have to refocus back on, okay, let's distinguish what's fact and what are assumptions, because we can acknowledge and aware of the facts. But if the assumptions, let's say, if they're just assumptions, then why assume the worst in someone or why assume the worst in a situation rather than assuming that things are going to work out, that things will have a way to work out for you if you just kind of relax and maintain that feeling of gratitude and happiness as consistently as you possibly can.
So when somebody goes through their dark night of the soul and everything's crashing around them, what would be the first step you would suggest for them to take?
Critical thing is monitoring and managing your self-talk and being aware of self-talk. And what I mean by that, and the term self-talk, I think people are becoming more aware, but it's still kind of a new concept for a lot of people. And self-talk is really like your inner dialogue, right? Everybody has inner dialogues going on all day, every day in their life. Paying attention to that inner dialogue and then asking yourself, and one of the tactics actually that Abraham Hicks teach and one of the processes that I really, really love and has really been effective in my life is when you have a thought that comes in and you're aware of that thought and the feeling that it generates, you ask yourself, was that a satisfying thought? Let's say, for instance, if you're getting ready for, in your example, if you're in the darkest of stages, seems like the world is crashing on you and your debt or whatnot. And just let's say if you had a thought that come in and said, oh my gosh, it's like, I will never get out of this hole. And then you stop yourself there and you ask, is that a satisfying thought? If the answer to that is no, then you try to reach for a better feeling thought, like anything better than where you're at. So instead of saying, gosh, I'll never get out of this hole, changing it to, I may be hitting rock bottom right now, but I know that there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel somehow. Even if you don't know how or where it's going to come about, but just having that thought. And so you change it to, I know that there is going to be light at the tunnel somehow, somewhere. And then you ask yourself, was that a more satisfying thought? And because it's yes, then you just keep going on that path. And eventually you'll kind of mentally climb your way out of that feeling of despair and climb up that emotional guidance scale and feel better.
Awesome. So you became more deliberate and stuff. And I was wondering if there's anything more personal / tangible you're willing to share that I guess you could really see something in your life.
I went through and I shared with you previously in 2012. That was when what I feel like my life hit rock bottom in terms of my career, my relationship, my finances and whatnot. To me, that was a pivotal moment in my life because at that point, what I did was, and I look back and I don't know how I had this awareness and courage to do this, but I basically defied logic. I said, I acknowledge the facts, right? The fact is I was out of a job. The fact is I am $150,000 in debt. And the fact is my marriage is not the strongest that it is right now and is struggling. And I acknowledge that. But after that, I kind of placed it aside. And then I asked myself this one question that really changed the course of my life. It simply is, if money and resources were not an issue, what would I want to do with my life? How would I want to live? And from then, I allowed myself the space to really dig deep down and answer that question. And when I did, what happened was I found clarity on what it is that I really want and what my life vision and my ideal life would look and feel like to me. And I found my dream business that I wanted to do and why I wanted to do that. And I wanted to open up this, what I call a haven of well-being, to help others come and feel relaxed and welcomed and reconnect with themselves or with others and find that and have a safe place for them to seek answers and be enlightened and uplifted and inspired to become their best self and live their best life. So that was my ideal business. And at that point, like I said, being $150,000 in debt and whatnot, I had no idea how I was going to do this. And every time when that pesky little thought of doubt seep in, it's like, how the heck are you going to do this? I mean, are you kidding me? You're just being, ridiculous at this point. And I just kind of like gently pushed that thought to the side. I didn't let that deter me. I said, you know what? This is the first time in my life that I have found clarity, like a vision that is so vivid and so clear to me and so exhilarating to me that I just want to follow this feeling and this vision and see where it leads me. That was what I did. It's that I put everything aside. I didn't care that I completely gave up on applying to jobs and trying to get back into the workforce. I just gave myself, like I said, I gave myself the space to reconnect with myself, find that clarity and feeling myself up internally rather than externally. I started volunteering and helping others, which then helps me feel even better about myself. I engaged in interests and hobbies, read books and anything that I could do to help me feel better. But at the same time, in my meditations, I would constantly visualize this vision of the dream business that I had and kept that active and alive within me. And before I knew it, Brett, it was maybe a month later, I was out of the blue. Somebody that I had casually met at a networking event that I was helping to organize reached out to me and said, hey, I work at this company. They're looking for someone who has your expertise. Would you be interested in coming to work for us. It was out of the blue and I wasn't even looking. I didn't even apply. And all I did was, because out of common courtesy for them to reach out to me, I reached out back and said, sure, I'll look into it to see. And I said, if worst cases, I can always say no if it doesn't seem aligned with where I want to go. And before I knew it, 2 weeks later, I was offered a job making more than I was before in a completely new industry, and the environment was 1,000 times better. That was all happening, coming to me. I didn't seek for it. I didn't apply for it. I didn't look for it, nothing. It was just coming, the opportunity just presented itself to me. And from then, more and more opportunities followed. Less than 3 years afterwards, I climbed out of my debt. I paid off all my debt and started being on the other side and experiencing financial abundance from there.
How do you go about working with other people?
Primary thing that I help my clients with is finding that clarity, right? Because without that clarity of what is that they want in life, where they want to head, and be grounded in the why of that, the life's challenges and distractions is going to pull you in so many different directions and leave you frustrated and overwhelmed and unfulfilled. That is my first and foremost, is that I help people find clarity on what it is that they want in their life and what their life vision, their ideal life looks and feels like to them. And then from there, I help them, I work on mindset. I do a lot of mindset work to identify and overcome their limiting beliefs. We work on the self-talk, and we work on also implementing a lot of practices that is going to help them find that inner peace and maintain that inner peace from day to day, so that they can open themselves up for feeling better and attracting more and more greater experiences into their life and being intentional and living with purpose. And then it's just helping them make sure that they're staying on track. And if they have any issues or things that kind of they're stuck on, it's just reevaluating what other things that we need to address to help them get past and overcome that limiting belief and help them bridge the gap from where they are to where they want to be, so that they can start experiencing the life that they want to live and the life that really they're meant for.
So do you have any fun success stories to share?
There's one client that I was working with, and when I first started working with him, he was in a position where, similar to myself a few years ago, was just laid off his job. And at that point, we started talking. I asked him the same question that I asked myself many years ago. I said, if money and resources were not an issue right now for you, just kind of take the current situation and put it aside for right now. If money and resources were not an issue, what would you want to do with your life? And he gave me a very candid, frank answer. He said, you know what? I really don't know. And he said, I really have not ever thought about that or had the opportunity to, give myself that opportunity and space to find that answer. And so we worked on that. What happened was that we started unraveling and revealing what was his deeper passion and calling that he was really interested in, getting him to think intentionally more. Because before, he was like me. He was desperately applying to any jobs and trying to just get any job just to get back into the workforce and have some sort of income. And even jobs that he was underqualified or overqualified, for. After working probably for, I think it was 5 weeks after working together, he emailed me and he said, a company just reached out to me and asked him if they would be interested in this position that they have, and that he has the skills and whatever that they were looking for. And the most interesting part of this all was that he did interview with this same company months ago, about 3 months ago. And he was really trying to follow up and trying to really get his foot in the door with this company, and didn't heard anything back from them at all. And it was just 5 weeks after working together and getting him to really tap into and intentionally thinking and dreaming and getting clarity on what it is that he wants in his life and where he wants to head. That same company reached out to him and offered him the position and seeked him out for the position, rather than him having to do the hard work of desperately trying to get them to let him get the foot in the door.
Awesome. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So what do you enjoy most about what you do?
What I enjoy most is just the ability to work with and meet and learn about everybody's story and work with them to see where they're at, where they want to be, help them become better versions of themselves and be the best version of themselves and live their best life. Being able to play a part in helping them and transforming them to that point, to me is like the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So we're getting to the end of our time together. One thing I like to ask my interviewees is to do a 1 minute of motivation. You can think of this as if you have a time machine, you're going back to your 8-year-old self, and you want to convey everything you need to know to live a happy, joyful life. But unfortunately, you have a minute until you're taken back into the future. Or you can think of it as taking your entire life's message and condensing it down to a minute.
All right. I would say that each one of us is the author of our own life story. So no matter where we are, what we've been through, or even what our life circumstances may be, we get to decide how the rest of our life story unfolds. Practice harnessing the power to write your own life story with a daily discipline for achieving inner peace, whether that be through meditation, visualization, journaling, or whatnot. And also taking the time to find clarity on what your ideal life looks and feels like to you. The answers you seek are all from within. Have fun and let how you feel and your life vision be the beacon that guides you through life. And know that no matter where you're at, you can turn your ideal life into a living reality because your mindset is a gateway to your desired future.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jacquelynne, for coming on my podcast. I really enjoyed your story of how you first started to live. When you're first living your life, you're kind of living by default, going through the corporate ladder, and seem to be utilizing money to kind of compensate for that hole within you, thus getting into that $150,000 debt hole. At that point, recognizing the fact that maybe if you are more deliberate with your life and looking at a way to change your thoughts into being more happy and joy-filled and creating that amazing, joyful living mindset, you're able to turn your life around. And not only are you turning your life around, you're helping other people do the same and living a more deliberate, purpose-filled life. So thank you so much for coming on my podcast and inspiring people. And thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, absolutely. It's been my absolute pleasure. So thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor. And hope you have a wonderful holidays coming up.
May your day be special.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That was my interview with Jacequelynne Peterson. That is what I love about the law of attraction, the fact that it can be very empowering, giving you the feeling that you are in control of your life because you cannot change how people act or what happens in your past, but you can change your mindset and what you do about it. And listening to someone who has done that and is helping other people do the same, I think is very empowering. The mindset aspect of the law of attraction, I really enjoy the processes of getting yourself into that mindset of positivity. I think is excellent, and working with Jacquelynne, I am sure, will help you become excellent as well. So if you want to work with Jacquelynne, you can find Jacquelynne at www.joyfullivingmindset.com. Make sure to check her free gift, 4 Steps to Finding Your Greater Purpose and Direction. This guide will help you jumpstart your journey to finding clarity on your life vision and start living with more purpose, joy, and direction. You can also find her on Facebook at Joyful Living Mindset. Working with Jacquelynne, you will find clarity on your life vision, learn how to leverage your mindset to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. No matter where you're at, you can turn your ideal life into a living reality because your mindset is a gateway to the future. Thank you so much for listening to episode 59 of the Joyous Expansion podcast. Wow, almost to the big 6-0. I hear that is the silver anniversary. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you like it, please send me an email to bre2ts2pr2es at joyousexpansion.com. You can also just leave a like, message, review, share anything to help this podcast become more popular. I would greatly appreciate it. You can also check me out at Joyous Expansion Instagram, Joyous Expansion Twitter. I also think I'm actually Joyous Expansion on LinkedIn. Increase Your Joy on Facebook, which of course is bad SEO. But if you do look up Joyous Expansion, you will find me on Facebook. So that's awesome. Once again, I'm Brett Dupree, your champion of authentic joy, Joyous Expansion life coach, and catalyst of transformation for the Church of Awesome, reminding you once again to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play my jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach, good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue, I'm sure he'll do the same. same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.